In this video, we will explore the algebra that you run into when you are dealing with angle pairs. So, for problem number 1, we have the two angles pictured. First of all, let's circle some vocabulary that relates to these. This is a pair that is a linear pair because of the way the two angles together form a straight line. So they're definitely a linear pair. And when you have a linear pair like this, they are supplementary. Because they form a line together, that means they add up to 180 degrees. And that's what supplementary means. Okay, these are also adjacent angles because that just means that they are right next to each other and they're not overlapping. So they are adjacent angles. They're not congruent, they are not complementary. So what is the measure of angle 1? Well, if the measure of angle 2 is 57 degrees, if I want to find angle 1, I should be doing 180 minus 57 degrees. So that's 123 degrees. Problem number 2. The first thing that pops into my head, these are vertical angles. When you have intersecting lines, these angles that are right across from each other are called vertical angles. So these are vertical angles. And vertical angles are always congruent. Okay, so if angle 1 is 38 degrees, then the measure of angle 2 is also 38 degrees. Okay, they're not complementary because they do not add up to 90. They're not supplementary. They're not adjacent. They're not a linear pair. So that's it. Okay, angle 5 and 6. Because they are next door to this 90-degree angle, that means angle 5 and 6 together also form a 90-degree angle. So if you take these, the sum of these, they must add up to 90 degrees. So that makes them complementary. All right? They add up to 90. They are also adjacent angles because they are right next to each other without any overlap or anything. They aren't supplementary, they aren't vertical, they are not a linear pair, and they're not congruent. So in terms of circling, we're done. Now, if the measure of angle 5 is 22, so if this is 22 degrees, if I want to find angle 6, I should be doing 90 minus 22. So that's going to be 68. All right. So we're going to use this information for the next 3 questions. Okay. So angle 1 and 2 are, well, these are vertical angles, and we know that vertical angles are congruent. Okay. So that means their measures are equal to each other. Since their measures are equal to each other, all right, that means the measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 2. So the measure of angle 1 is the expression 2x plus 15. And that should equal the measure of angle 2, which says 3x plus 5. So then the algebra, we just need to solve these equations. So when you have the variable on both sides, you want to get those on the same side by subtracting one of them. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Okay, that way these will cancel each other out. And meanwhile, over here, I will have negative x plus 15 is equal to 5. Now I need to get x by itself by subtracting 15 from both sides. So that's going to give me negative x is equal to negative 10. Now I can't leave this negative, so I'm going to just divide both sides by negative 1, and that will give me x is equal to positive 10. So that is the solution to the equation. Okay, look at problem number 5. Now this is a linear pair, so see how they form a straight line once you put them together? That means they have to add up to 180 degrees. They are supplementary. They have to add up to a total of 180 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to leave myself a lot of space here. In fact, I think I'll change colors. So they have to add up to 180 degrees. That means the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 has to equal 180 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 is 2x plus 15. Okay? Now plus the measure of angle 2, that's 3x plus 5. And that has to equal 180. It is time to combine like terms. All right, so we have the 2x and the 3x. Together, that makes 5x. And then we have the 15 and the 5. Together, that makes 20. Okay, and that equals 180. All right, we just combine like terms. So now we will subtract 20 from both sides. So that will give us 5x is equal to 160. And then we just need to divide both sides by 5 to get x by itself. Okay, so it's a matter of so that's 32. Okay. All right, let's look at problem number 6. So, angle 1 and angle 2, they are nestled inside this 90 degree angle over here. So they are complementary, right, because of the way they are inside a 90 degree angle. So it's easy to see that they will add up to 90 degrees. So that means the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 must equal 90. All right, they are complementary. And the measure of angle 1 is 2x plus 15. And then the measure of angle 2 is 3x plus 5. So that has to add up to 90. Time to combine like terms. All right, so 2x and 3x, that's 5x. $15 and 5, that's 20. And that's going to equal 90. So to solve this, we need to subtract 20 from both sides. So that's going to be 5x is equal to 70. And then we will divide both sides by 5 to get x by itself. All right, because that way these will cancel each other out. And that is 14. All right, there's a little bit more to each problem here at the end that I missed. So I need to go back and look at number 4 and 5 again because of this part down here at the bottom. So fine, we found that x is 10, and we found that x is 32, and we found that x is 14. But they also want to know what's the measure of angle 1 and what's the measure of angle 2. Okay, so remember that x is 10. So if x is 10, then the measure of angle 1 is going to be 2 times 10 plus 15. Okay, so that's going to be 2 times 10 plus 15. So that's 35. So the measure of angle 1 is 35. Okay, maybe I should write that down right here. So the measure of angle 1 was equal, what did I say? 2 times 10 plus 15. And the measure of angle 2, okay, that's 3x plus 5. So that's going to be 3 times 10 plus 5. That is also 35. And of course we knew they would be equal because they are vertical angles, so we knew they were congruent. Okay, now for problem number 5, x is 32. So again, the measure of angle 1, remember this is it was 2x plus 15. So this is going to be 2 times 32 plus 15. Whoops, that's not the calculator. So that is 79. Now, these are supposed to be supplementary. So once I know that the one angle is 79, I could find the measure of angle 2 by doing 180 minus 79. So that should be 101 degrees. Okay, or I could have used 3x plus 5, and it should give me the same answer. Okay, maybe I'll just show it. So x is 32. So if I do 3x plus 5, that would be 3 times 32, whoops, plus 5. Okay, so we get the same answer. And finally, for number 6 here, if I want to find the measure of angle 1, again, we're talking about 2x plus 15. So this is 2 times 14 plus 15. So that's 43. Okay, now if I want to find the measure of angle 2, I can either use the formula for the measure of angle 2 again, or these are complementary. They have to add up to 90. So I could just do 90 minus 43 if I wanted to. All right, either way, I should get 47. Looking at number 7, these angles are a linear pair. You can tell because of the way they make a straight line when you put them together. All right, that means they have to add up to 180. So this is a linear pair. Okay, they are supplementary. They are also adjacent angles. They're right next to each other. Okay, I could circle all of those. Anyway, it's the supplementary part that we need to use to make the equation. Okay, so the measure of angle 13 plus the measure of angle 14 has to equal 180. All right, they're supplementary. They make a straight line together. So if the measure of angle 13 is 4x plus 11, and then the measure of angle 14 is 3x plus 1. Those two expressions need to add up to 180. So it is time to combine like terms. So look, 4x and 3x, you put those together, you get 7x. And then you've got 11 and 1. You put those together, and of course you have 12. And then I'm just going to bring down the rest of the equation, equals 180. So we will solve this by subtracting 12 on both sides. So then I'll have 7x is equal to so I've got 168. And then finally, I'm going to divide both sides by 7 in order to get x by itself. So it already have the 168, so I can just hit divided by 7, and that's 24. So x is equal to 24. Now, this time I'm not missing it. They want me to say what's the measure of angle 13 and what's the measure of angle 14. Well, the measure of angle 13, all right, has this expression to it, 4x plus 11. So that's going to be 4 times 24 plus 11. So that's 107. All right, similarly, the measure of angle 14, we are given an expression for that as well. Okay, now, so I could use this expression. I could do 3x plus 1. All right, so that would be 3 times 24 plus 1. Okay, so that gives me 73. Or I could use the fact that these are supplementary. Since they're supplementary, as soon as I had the 107, I could do 180 minus 107. All right, either way you get the 73. Okay, all right, we're going to do something very similar for problem number 8. Okay, these are vertical angles. All right, when you have angles that are across from each other like this, all right, these are vertical angles. Vertical angles are always going to be congruent. Since they are congruent, that means that the measure of angle 2 should equal the measure of angle 3. So I need to set these equal to each other. You know what? I see that I have squared. I really want the squared on the left side of the equation. Maybe it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to switch around the order. So I'm going to say the measure of angle 3 is equal to the measure of angle 2, just because I want the x squared on the left. So I have x squared minus x plus 12 is equal to 4x plus 6. Okay, now how do I solve an equation like this? We haven't seen this so far this year. Well, when you have an equation that has x squared and a regular x in it, you really need to get 0 on one side. So I'm definitely going to subtract this 4x away from here. But I'm also going to subtract the 6, all right, because I need to get 0 over here. So this is going to give me x squared, and then negative 5x plus 6, or I'm just combining these like terms, is equal to 0. Okay? All right, now we need to factor this. I'm going to factor this by grouping. And for grouping, you need to pay attention to your A, B, C's. So this is A is 1, and B is negative 5, and C is 6. So when you do factoring by grouping, I think it helps to make a little X box over here. And up here, I'm going to do A times C. And down here, I'm going to have my B value. And then I'll show you what to do with that. So A times C, that's 1 times 6. So this is going to be 6. And then my B value is going to be negative 5. So what I need to do is I need to find two numbers that multiply to give you 6. But if you add them, you get negative 5. So for example, if I did 2 times 3, all right, that's probably the first thing that comes into your mind that gives you 6. But if I add those together, that makes positive 5, not negative 5. Well, what if I did negative 2 times negative 3? Well, a negative times a negative is a positive, so that works. And negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5. So this is the correct pair. Now, what do I do with that? I use these two numbers to split up the middle term. So I'm going to keep, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. I'm going to keep the x squared, but I'm going to take my negative 5x and I'm going to split that up into negative 2x and negative 3x. So I will have x squared negative 2x minus 3x, and then I will keep my plus 6. All right, now I can factor by grouping. And the way you do that is you group these terms together. If you look at the first pair, the first two terms, what's the common factor? See how they both have an x? So I can pull out an x outside of parentheses. That's going to leave behind x minus 2. And you can imagine if you did the distributive property, you would get right back to where you started from. X times x, that's x squared. X times negative 2, that's negative 2x. So I haven't changed anything. Now, be really careful with the negative 3. So, of course, I'm going to take that negative 3 outside of parentheses. But when you think about what goes on the inside, you need to think about dividing by negative 3. Let me move this for a second. If you want to know what goes inside the parentheses, you take that negative 3 that you're pulling out and you divide, all right? You're dividing by negative 3, not positive 3. Okay, so if you do that, of course the negative 3's will cancel out and you just have x. But positive 6 divided by negative 3 is negative 2. Not positive 2. And again, if you did the distributive property, negative 3 times x, that's negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Notice that the way we did it, we come up with a factor that's the same. Okay, this x minus 2 appears twice. So x minus 2 is now a common factor. So what you can do is pull that out front. So I'm going to take this x minus 2 and take it away from each term. Put it out front of parentheses. Now if I take that away, that's going to leave behind x and negative 3. So that's why I will have x minus 3. Okay, so that's why this factors down to x minus 2 times x minus 3. All right, now we're still solving an equation. So far we factored it, and it factors down to this, and it equals 0. So when you have something times something equals 0, you have two possibilities. Either the first thing equals 0, or the second thing equals 0. Either way, it will give you a valid solution. So I can solve each of these and get 2 answers. So by adding 2 to both sides, I get x equals 2. So that's one possibility. By adding 3 to both sides, I get x equals 3. So that is another possibility. Okay? Now, so I just need to check something. So I need to make sure that both of these are valid. So these are solutions, but if I plug them back in, I need to make sure I'm not getting any negative answers, because you can't have negative angles. So let me assume for a moment that both of these are okay. If x is 2, let's see what I get for the measure of angle 2 and the measure of angle 3. Okay, the expression for the measure of angle 2 is 4x plus 6. Okay, so this would be 4 times 2 plus 6, because 4x plus 6. All right, you should be able to do this in your head. All right, so that's going to be 14. All right, what about the measure of angle 3? The expression for, well, okay, the measure of angle, these should be equal. So if this is 14, then this will also be 14. So far, so good. All right, now, what about if x is 3? Is that going to be okay? All right, let me just erase this for a second. So the measure of angle 2, again, the expression is 4x plus 6. Okay, so if I do 4 times 3 plus 6, what am I going to get? Okay, that gives me 18. Okay, so angle 3 should also be 18. So we have 2 sets of answers. All right, number 9, finding the value of x. These angles are alternate interior angles. See how they're both acute? They're both less than 90. When you have parallel lines cut by a transversal, when you see 2 acute angles, chances are they are equal. And certainly if you have alternate interior angles, they are congruent. So that means that 9x minus 9 should equal 8x plus 2. All right, these are congruent. So it's just a matter of solving this equation. I see variables on both sides, so I'm going to subtract to get them together. So that's going to give me x minus 9 is equal to 2. Then I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So x is equal to 11. Okay, are they going to ask us to find anything else? No, this time that's it. All right, so that was number 9. And finally, number 10. These are consecutive interior angles. When you have parallel lines cut by a transversal, see how these angles are sort of in the same bucket together? All right, they're in the same little cave. Whenever that happens, these are going to be supplementary. All right, these have to add up to 180. So that means that the 16x plus 6, all right, that's one angle. Let's see, plus, I'll use the same red again, plus the 27x plus 2. These have to add up to 180. All right, they're supplementary. So let's just combine like terms. All right, if I put these together, 16x and 27x, That's 43. So I get 43x. All right. If I put these together, all right, well, that's just 6 plus 2, so that's going to be 8. And that should equal 180. So we just have to solve for x by subtracting 8 from both sides. So that's going to be 43x is equal to, and this should be 172. And now we need to divide both sides by 43 to get x by itself. So we're dividing by 43. All right, let's see what it is. Let's see what it is. Four. So x is 4. Kabam. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.